Hello, my name is Sean and I've been making zines for more than 20 years, and in this video I'm going to show you how I published a photo zine titled For the Record. I started making zines in the early aughts when I worked at a record store. We covered indie, punk, and metal, interviewing and writing about our favorite bands that weren't in Rolling Stone or Spin magazine. We had cover stories on bands like Cursive, Thursday, and the Street Dogs. For the Record, one of several photo zines I've published this year, takes a look at an influential live music venue in South Carolina during its final 3 months at its original location. I chose a photo zine format over a photo book for this project because I wanted it to be more affordable and more accessible to the people who go to the club. And it made sense considering the historic connection between independent music and zines. Back in the fall of 2023, I was looking for a book or zine project when I learned the club, New Brooklyn Tavern, was facing a move from their original location. It looked imminent, so I dove headfirst, and it was kind of a no-brainer. Before moving full-time into photography, I bartended at the music venue I photographed for this project. Since I worked the club a decade ago, I had good access, but the post-pandemic staff was a different generation, and our paths had never crossed as coworkers. Because of this, I made a lot of specific attempts to be around and just show my face. I only live about a half a mile from the club, so it wasn't too difficult. And this is one of the most important things when working on documentary type projects. Gaining trust and access, and making people comfortable with you just being around. I think this is why projects that are deeply personal have greater impact than those that aren't. The photographer has an extra layer of familiarity and access to the things they're photographing. Sometimes as photographers, we find ourselves chasing projects with shiny things that are new to us. Because we're curious people. I need to remind myself to look deeper at the things I'm already familiar with. If you're looking at an idea for a photo zine, I recommend looking at common theme or tackling storytelling as opposed to a greatest hits of your favorite photos. With the latter, it's more about yourself as a photographer. I recommend doing something for others. For the Record was my fourth zine project with Mix'em as my printer, but I also researched Print Ninja and Newspaper Club, and all three of these options offer sampler kits. You may also have a local option available to you, but whomever you get, make sure you get some print samples in your hand first. After choosing the 3:2 aspect ratio for the zine, I chose the size by incrementally changing the measurements and paying attention to the shifts in price point on the Mix'em website. They offer custom sizes, and this is pretty important to me. I advise making these decisions to help complement your style rather than changing your style to fit the parameters of the zine. I typically make photos that are horizontal in the 3:2 aspect ratio, so I knew that my zine needed to have double page spreads that were 3:2. Another option outside of a professional printer is just using a home printer. I made my first zines using a printer at home that was less than $100. I'm currently also making photo zines with the Epson 8550 home printer, and you can see a video about that here, even though it's on the road. But back to For the Record. I spent 3 months photographing shows at the club and then posting photos on social media and talking about the project I was working on. Here, I was building an audience as I went along for the zine. I launched the pre-sale for the photo zine on Black Friday and then mailed out certificates for anybody who wanted to give the zine as a gift, which wouldn't arrive until after the holidays. I also used a small email list that I have of about 100 people, and by the time the pre-sale launched, most folks already knew about the project. After the final night of operation of the club in West Columbia, I had photographed dozens of shows and had hundreds of keepers to sort through. Like many photojournalists, I used Photo Mechanic to call my photos, and after my first edit, I narrowed it down to about 200 images. I wanted the zine under 60 pages to keep it from busting at the seams. I didn't want to waste any white space or worry about design, so I went full bleed, double truck with every photo and page. 60 pages meant 30 photos. I didn't pick my favorite 30 photos because I wanted the 30 photos that worked best together in this format. I wanted live and off-stage moments, musicians, fans, staff, and regulars. I considered rhythms with color and rhythm with movement from left to right and right to left. I wanted to embrace wide, medium, and tight photos. I had to avoid photos with subjects in the center of the frame because this is where the gutter is, where the pages come together. And I wanted to tell a story about the club, and I can't do this as well if I'm just picking my favorite photos. I made tiny prints of those 200 keepers, put them out on a table, and organized them in columns of color and rows of subject matter. Right off the bat, I was able to eliminate several dozen because I could quickly see that I had better options available from the 200 sitting in front of me. I picked the cover photo because I wanted the zine to open up like you were walking into the club. I made the photo with this in mind. From here, I picked a small number of photos that I thought had to be included in the zine. Then I picked the best photos to help through the journey in between. Eventually, I had the sequencing of the zine laid out in front of me, but this took a few days. I wanted to have an added personal touch to the zine, so I used a tablet to incorporate my handwriting as the text. This took me a lot longer than I thought it would. If you're new to using a tablet, I highly recommend you get one that allows you to write or draw on screen. I happen to do this part of the project in Photoshop. After this, I use Adobe InDesign to lay out the pages and prepare the document for the printer. There's other options available, this is just what I'm most familiar with. When I had the layout done for a first draft, I used my home printer to print out the pages, stapled, bound them, and then cut off the edges, and I had a proof. This happened to be one of my biggest hurdles in this project because Epson customer service couldn't answer my basic questions about paperweight and double-sided printing. I'm on my 4th printer this year, 2 different models. I've returned 1 of each. After a long battle, I've come to really like the Epson ET8550, but at first it was a pain in the ass. After looking at the homemade proof in my hand, I changed the sequencing slightly and increased the thickness in my handwriting. Then I sent a file off to mix them for 5 copies of the zine. After seeing these copies, I increased the thickness of my handwriting and fixed a couple spelling mistakes. Then I sent a file off to mix them for 500 copies. I ordered 500 despite only pre-selling 130 because I wanted to sell these in the future and be able to give them away to potential clients for years to come. And after 500 copies, there was a substantial price break. I held a release party for the zine at the club, but most of my sales, probably near 90%, have all come from the pre-sales. I also tabled at zine fairs in Athens, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, and Jacksonville, Florida. And all of these experiences were great, but my favorite one was in Jacksonville at the Duval County Zine Fair. If you want more information about my zines, it's available at sotacitizen.com.